Hey, this is the Fight Size MMA podcast. I'm Ed Gallo, your co-host, and my other co-host is Sriram, whose name I've only messed up once, and Tumen, whose name I won't reveal fully because I'm still confused about whether we call him Iggy or not. How are you two doing?
I'm good.
I mean, fairly sleep deprived, but overall fine because I've just finished doing my first and I guess only heavy hands appearance. The first and only because I kept making fun of Connor the whole way through and shooting down any attempts at Cyril Gunn apologism. Just, doing the Lord's work, that kind of stuff.
That's right. Connor deserves it, and Cyril Gahn deserves it, and you did nothing wrong. And I applaud you. I can't wait to listen to it.
Yeah.
Today on the podcast, we're going to do not too many things, but we're going to do the things that we do a lot. That made sense, right? So we're going to talk about UFC 265. We're going to spend a lot of time on that, I think, almost the entire podcast. And then we're going to briefly cover the two outside the UFC events that are coming up, PFL and Bellator. I know we try to cover PFL as much as possible, which is nice because they have two events a month that are worth caring about because they're like lightweight or featherweights, and sometimes their welterweights matter. And then it's just like everybody else can, they can go do it.
Honestly, we are doing them a favor at this rate.
Yeah,
they should be grateful.
Yeah.
Also, the weight class situation. Yeah, the weight class situation is like identical to every other promotion, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like it's tough to be too hard on them for that one.
Yeah, very different than what I do for the UFC, just focusing on the lighter weights. But yeah, and speaking of focusing on the lighter weights, for our UFC 265 discussion, let's start with the best thing. Let's get right into the best thing that happened. Is freaking Jose Aldo, man, is just. What else can we say?
This is what is refreshing about our MMA podcast as opposed to other stuff like Heavy Hands, because they started with Cyril Gunn and fucking heavyweight, and I'm guessing Slack also did.
Who knows what Slack does?
I mean, yeah, Slack does whatever the fuck he wants, and usually not putting too much effort into it. I guess he does what he does.
Unlike me, who puts a ton of effort in, I'm very prepared for this. I watched the fights. That's my preparation.
Yeah. Unlike me, I never watch fights. The only everything that I've learned about the fights is it's basically there's just some vague idea that I've assembled through sheer osmosis. And
normally that is genuinely true,
Mm-hmm.
but this time Tumen, Sriram, and Julian did the alternate commentaries for this event, and they did 5 of them, which is nuts.
There's documented evidence that I actually watched the fights.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, during the fight, pretty much all we had to say was "Wow, Aldo!" on loop over and over, which was a really striking contrast to what the heavyweight main event was like, which is the opposite over and over.
But
why over and over? But
I went on a piss break during the main event because I just got so bored. First of all, I got bored, and then I just thought, it's not going to be much of a loss if I wouldn't comment on every pot shot and throwaway jab that Cyril Gunn threw that connected just barely.
Yeah, we've officially said more things about Cyril Gunn at the early stage of this podcast than I think we've promised. But
we were supposed to avoid it. We're supposed to go right to Aldo.
Exactly.
This isn't the plan.
We've poisoned the well. Aldo Munoz, just a tremendous fight. I mean, even just as a fight, I think it was pretty interesting. As an Aldo performance, it was just sublime. If you go to the Twitter account, you go to the site, I wrote a thing on it. I think it came out earlier today. So read that, and it's probably going to rehash all the stuff that I have to say here in much more eloquent form. But yeah, it was tremendous. Jose Aldo looking a bit more comfortable on the back foot than I think he's looked at any point in his bantamweight tenure so far. Really strong counter jabbing, which is something that I don't think we've seen from him since Edgar
throw
won.
Away volume.
When
did you see Aldo do that?
Yeah. Exactly. That's the big point that I think people should take away from this fight. He's had a lot of these same tools before. We've seen the Dutchie before, for instance. We've seen a lot of sharp counter combinations. We've seen the jab, but the way that Aldo was able to modulate the power and the commitment of his output this time is something that I don't think we've ever seen before. And that's something, it's insanely rare. I don't think you're going to end up giving any old fighter, not even an old fighter, but any fighter who's fought more than like 10, 11, 12 years, a new philosophical approach to build their tools on. It's just not something that you do. And the fact that Jose Aldo went over to the Brazilian Navy and was like, hey, I need to learn how to do this, and they taught him how to do it, it doesn't make any sense. It's absurd. So
is that why he had the crazy chest patch in the Cheeto
I think
fight?
it was. I think we assumed it would be a little bit more problematic because
we
it's
thought
like
it was
military.
fascism related, but it was actually boxing related, which is almost worse.
I mean, Jose Aldo just
it's a good thing.
Putting all the stops on all fronts, from his performance against Pedro Munoz and the Navy thing turning out to be not something crazy, something to do with conspiracy theories and like fascism, and also speaking out in support of a fighters union to boot. So, just basically covering all his bases to.
Some guys can do it all.
Get yourself a man who can do both.
I know. So my just quick thoughts on the fight, and just to recap what we thought before the fight was that he was going to kick his ass, and then he was going to get tired, and then he was going to get his ass kicked. And it was just us deciding whether or not when that would happen and what the scoring would end up being based on that. That is not what happened. And as both these guys said, I mean, more comfortable on the back foot, throwaway volume. Really, he found a way to deal with a problem he's had his entire career. It's not just like, oh, I'm old now and this is more of an issue. He's been like mismanaging his pace and hasn't been able to figure out exactly how to be efficient for the full duration of a fight his entire career. He gassed in the 5th round in his UFC debut against Mark Hominick. He gassed at the end of the Lamas fight. He's had tons of fights where he couldn't really manage his energy because, like we said, he's been a pro for 17 years. And that entire time, he's been fighting and training like a maniac because he was the most athletic fighter in the history of MMA, probably the most physical for sure. And if we round up all the attributes and put them together, he's got it all. And oh my God, he fights in a way that nobody else does. And now that he's severely diminished, I would say in that respect, he's still one of the most athletic guys in the division, but. It doesn't allow him to scare people off the way it used to. He isn't able to limit exchanges the way he used to with lower volume. So he had to find out a way to have a higher volume approach. And you saw him trying by taking the front foot and trying to dictate the pace and trying to back people off. In the Moraes fight, he was not comfortable with that. First of all, he couldn't sustain the pace. I had to take the first round off, basically do all his work in the second round, then kind of just faded away in the 3rd round and couldn't really put things together. And Moraes actually did a decent job like counter jabbing him. So I think he learned a lesson there. And, just over time, you saw him making more and more adjustments, figuring out his pace, figuring out what he wants to do. I mean, the Peter Yan fight, who would have thought the 3rd round would be his best round in that fight? I mean, he made a lot of adjustments, but obviously Yan is not a good person to judge someone's cardio against because he has a funny way of taking people, breaking them down and putting them away. But this is easily the smartest fight of his career, I would say, considering his limitations. And after the first round, Munoz kind of gave up because he's like, I can't do it. I can't do it. Nothing he tried was working. Every kick was blocked or checked or countered. Every advance was like counter jabbed or pivoted off like with touching pivot or some sort of counter combination. And then when he sat back and Aldo actually got to get off on him, it was like turning over his jab into hooks and firing around the guard and hitting the body, kicking him, and just there was nothing he could do.
I mean, essentially, essentially Aldo basically did all the things that we wanted him to do for every outing of his that is like past ever since he dropped to bantamweight. This is essentially what we've been asking of him to do, aside from not cutting to bantamweight,
not being a bantamweight.
But I mean, to just sort of brag a little bit, I've essentially outlined like the path to victory for Aldo in the staff picks, which is to use more throwaway volume, more efficiency, scare Pedro Munoz off trying to enter into range and prolong the exchanges in the pocket. like trying to muscle him around, shoving him around, but utilize his size advantage, range advantage, and like physicality to shove the smaller man around and kind of like put a cap on the pace and control the pace by basically scaring him away with mixing in hard shots to the body and like just hard shots in general, but not utilizing just hard shots all the time and using more jabs and safety leads. And he's done all that like perfectly. Like,
It was funny. I watched the fight after the fact, and I was giving my reactions to everybody in the chat after I was watching it. While I was watching it, talking about the pivoting, and Tumen was like, "Yeah, I really wish he did more. Like every time he hit like an off angle right hand after he pivoted out." And exactly after he said that, he did it. I'm like, he did everything you wanted.
I forgot that he did that. He's done so many things that I've asked him to do, and like I genuinely forgot some of them. Like he walked Pedro Munoz onto knees. He hit the body.
The first one was crazy.
Yeah, it was insane.
Yeah.
It should have like any other guy would have like bent in half and just quit then and there. It's like one of the worst knees I've ever seen in terms of like damage, you know. And what else did he do? He's done many things. A lot of them.
All of
hard
it,
to count.
everything.
Yeah, I think the most impressive thing I found about the fight was how quickly Aldo sort of made the reach that he needed. I don't think we've ever really thought of Aldo as a sort of like super studied fighter, if that makes sense. Like he goes in and he has his process, and he's so tight about everything that you're like, oh, he can just deal with things as they come. And it's very possible that that's who he is. But against Munoz, like he pretty much came in like dealing with as soon as Munoz showed the jab in the first round, he started dealing with it with the counter jab. And as soon as Munoz started like jabbing and ducking, Aldo dealt with it in like the next exchange. It was absolutely like Munoz did it twice. He drew the counter with the jab and he ducked underneath, or he drew the counter with the jab and he lowered his level, and Aldo just started dealing with it instantly. He started either hitting him with that big knee or hitting him with the uppercut, or like most commonly he just like lowers level with Munoz, walk him onto the shoulder and just shove him away.
Great.
It was like it was so mean.
It's kind of like remind me of something like savvy boxers usually do in like at the highest level. Like someone like Floyd Mayweather would shove his elbow or his forearm or his shoulder in someone's face when they try to enter range, and then he would pivot off. And Aldo did that, and like the thing where he did where he put his hand on Munoz to make him think that he's still in front of him and pivot out while doing it. Just.
Yeah, there was a lot of boxing-style clinching type things, like a lot of Aldo closing distance to pivot, and a lot of the, just hit him with the shoulder and immediately frame off. It was really nice. And yeah, the thing where he touched him, I thought it was super nice for a couple of reasons. One, the way that he like kind of played off the left hook and turned like the motion of the left hook into the frame on his shoulder. It was just like Munoz had no idea that wasn't a hook that he'd have to block until he was already like pivoting off and just turning him around on the cage. And I don't know, it was a really well-considered performance from Aldo, one that showed a lot of the things that we'd really want. First, it showed a lot of things we'd want Aldo to do, and secondly, it showed a lot of the things that Aldo has done throughout his career. And both of those are big asks. Like 17 years into your career, it's just not supposed to be possible.
Calf kicks aren't real. They aren't real. They're a psyop. They don't work. Just pick up your leg, idiot.
It's so weird because like Renato Moicano tried to do the same thing to Aldo several times in the first fight, and Aldo just ignored it. And that was 2 years ago, and we were like, hey, how did he beat Renato Moicano 15 years into his career? And now we're over 2 years later, and he's still doing the same thing to really stout top 5 Brazilian contenders. It doesn't make any sense. It's absurd. So yeah, I mean, really just highest of praise.
What do fighters usually do when they reach that 10-year threshold in their careers? What happens usually is they start
stripping back
downward slope all the way down.
Fighters, and maybe they're good at it, and maybe they're bad at it.
Yeah, like if they're smart, they usually become counter fighters, and they usually sometimes like I discussed this on Heavy Hands with Connor and Phil, and they talked about how older fighters usually become gun shy. And maybe you could see some of that, some like a glimpse of that in Aldo against, say,
The
Volkanovski.
Volkanovski fight. Yeah.
And but then immediately he like tried to, I guess, well, pardon the pun, he tried to pivot away from it by doubling down on becoming like a more of a banger, and tried to push the pace more in his other fights. And then he figured out that, oh, this isn't the way to go. I fall off a cliff if I do that. And it's like just he keeps on learning. 17 years into his career, once again, he keeps on learning, keeps on just trying to take new stuff away from the fights that he's been in. And it's like young fighters don't learn as fast and as well as he does. Just the man, it's a thinking fighter. There is some stuff going on inside that head of his. There's some gears are turning, you know, and
best ever, just greatest ever, all the above.
Just
Best
at
burgers.
this point, I'm not. That's true. A famous burger, R.I.P. Apparently, it was shut down after the pandemic.
Not before Daniel
but-
Cormier got his hands on one.
they closed down after Daniel Cormier
Naturally.
got his hands on those burgers. That's the real reason. Just ate all the supply.
Yeah, I mean, I think. Yeah, Aldo's kind of setting kind of a new standard for what a great, good fighter can be. Like, it's kind of absurd. I'm not sure anyone's really done it the same way as he has. Like, in terms of the weight hopping, I'm not sure many fighters can do it that way. It's just not like practical to be a decently big featherweight. And then when everyone gets bigger, you're like, hey, I'm going to cut 10 more pounds while I'm super bad at it. It's a terrible career decision that happened to work. And the way that he was, like, you could really see him workshopping his approach to, you know, being a little bit gassier and a little bit worse at managing the pace. And a lot of this is just a response to his defense kind of degrading. And if you watch the Munoz fight, I don't think you'd get more than one or two clues that his defense was degrading. That's how good his defense
Pedro
used
Munoz
to be.
connected with a couple straight shots, and it's kind of a hint at his recent problem of not being able to see straight blows coming in.
Yeah, it's his reflexes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just literal age, which it's the rarest thing to see, right? You don't see fighters lasting long enough to just have age show up on them in that way, if it makes sense.
Well,
it's just he's slowing down as a physical human
partly
being.
it's also that the fact that he's cutting 10 more pounds, because whenever you cut weight, your reflexes kind of become all out of whack, and you have to readjust to it. So
That's true. Moraes is the first time we noticed it. Like Volkanovski, he was still pretty much there defensively. It's just that he had to really, really harshly ration out his cardio in a way that, I mean, he's still doing it. It's just I think he's figured out how to do it while still winning fights.
yeah.
The Yan fight was interesting because Yan would do all these interesting setups and all this like advanced stuff, and Aldo would be keen to all of it. And then Yan would stand in front of him, throw a 1-2, and it would just land clean.
I was legitimately at the point where I was like, hey, Cody Garbrandt might be stupid enough to win this fight. Because he'd just try and be fast and be completely stupid and not give Aldo the ways to, like,
I've always been on the train that
actually
Aldo
do
would dismantle
things.
Cody like at any time, at any point. Never.
At this
never
point,
lose to
I'm
Cody
very
Garbrandt.
confident. At this point, I'm very confident in that. But, I mean, like, you could see the points of concern, right? Like, if someone's just fast enough and test him as a physical level, you'd be like, hey, maybe this is kind of concerning. Now, I think he's at that point, I think. He knows what he's doing at bantamweight. I still don't think, obviously, he's not long for the sport because he's been long for the sport for way too long. But it's, like, anything he does at this point, it's been nothing but pluses for him for, like, 5 years.
like,
You know what his next plus is? He's going to knock out TJ Dillashaw.
I hope so.
That would be great.
I don't love that
Gonna
fight
knock
for
him
him at
out.
this point.
That would be
Gonna knock
great,
out
but
Floyd
I'm
Mayweather.
hesitant to get too hyped about it. Because, like, one thing has to
Yeah.
be
Better
emphasized. Why why we consider this all so crazy. It's, well, we talked about 17 years, but it's an undeniable fact that Jose Aldo has irrevocably and, like, definitively has declined athletically. It's just he used to be so insanely athletic prior to that people just it genuinely breaks people's brains to try and wrap their head around this whole fact.
Yeah.
Like, they always talk about he's so good that they still talk about Jose Aldo not being washed and not being shot and denying that he has faced some kind of decline. So just even like a very diplomatically worded statement of Jose Aldo has slowed down a bit. He's aging. gets a really like aggravated reaction out of some of the more like I guess loyal Aldo fans. It's very annoying because like Aldo it's insane and annoying that Aldo is so good that people just are able to kind of like deny the reality that he's slowing down. But just go back and watch his older fights. Like, look at him at his prime. He's even faster. He was even faster back then. His reflexes were even quicker back then. No one could lay a glove on him. And like when at usually at the highest level of competition, when you fall off and when you rely as much on your athleticism as Aldo did, and even though he was very fundamentally sound in many ways, much more fundamentally sound than 99% of MMA fighters, just basically either then or now, but he still relied a lot on his reflexes and his like these hair trigger reactions to find counters. And usually when fighters like this like decline a little bit, like 2%, 5%, they just fall off a cliff. They can't hang there with the elites. But he's so skillful, he's able to still just refine and develop his skills to such an extent that even when facing such a decline, it still becomes even like sort of a moot point, even like whether he has declined or not. It's crazy to watch.
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. It's tough to really add a ton just because like this was as close to a prime Aldo performance as we could have hoped. It wasn't even super close, but it was as close as we could have hoped to him doing the things he would have done to Pedro Munoz that we said he should have.
I think we've all talked about it at one point or another, like just discussing this fight elsewhere on Twitter or in chats. Is that Aldo, the usual knock on Aldo was always that he's a bit energy inefficient, or that he puts too much stink on his shots, or that all his punches like have this crazy wind up. None of that in this fight. Like everything is crisp and clean, and he's content to rely on his power advantage and frame advantage to just generate power and basically drop Munoz. Yeah, in the third round, his head was bouncing around like a speed bag, essentially. Like this is how badly Aldo was like kicking his ass.
Yeah, I mean, I still think there's reason to be wary about certain matchups for Aldo. I think Dillashaw is one of them. Rob Font is actually, I think that's a really, really interesting fight at this point. Maybe the most interesting for Aldo. Like, since we've already seen him fight Peter Yan, I don't really know if there's a ton of intrigue past a certain point, even with these adjustments. I think he'd do better with the way that he's figured it out, but I don't really know if that's particularly winnable. But I think...
Sriram, have you considered that no one ever hits TJ Dillashaw's body?
That's also
Sandhagen was like the first one to ever do it. Like, oh, he won't be able to just hit him. True. It's like, but what if he hits him in the body, though?
I mean, I think Aldo will be able to hit TJ a good bit. It's just TJ, I don't think he came back looking any less durable. And
I don't think Sandhagen's the guy to totally test his durability, though. And he was kind of knocking him around, and he's not some big hitter.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fair. It's just the big concern I always have with Aldo is just always going to be the pace. I think I still trust TJ after like 5 really hard rounds with a decent building threat to make that tough than I do Aldo to survive over 5. The adjustments that he's made, I think it'll carry him to like 5-round wins over worse fighters, if that makes sense. But someone who's really, really good at drawing out counters and laying on volume, I think it's going to be tricky. But yeah, I mean, I think Font is sort of the fight to make if they don't do Sandhagen versus Font.
Talk me into...
You know, it'll test his reaction.
It took me into TJ, like TJ losing to Aldo at this point, Ed.
Me?
Yeah.
He's going to punch him hard in the face a bunch of times, and he's going to fall down. Then Aldo's going to hit him more, and then it'll be over.
Very compelling.
Sell me on that not happening.
Well, if you consider that TJ, most of his ways of entering range are these bursting, shifting combinations, and Aldo is, very good at countering those.
I changed my mind. He's going to knee him.
Yeah. And
he's
said
do him
that
like Cowboy did Alexander Hernandez.
You said that no one punched TJ in the body. Not really. And He looked he looked visibly worse for wear when Sandhagen did that against him, I think. Or was it just because from
Lineker
him
too.
like pushing an insane pace while standing on one leg and having his face like cut open?
Could be lots of
Could
things.
be lots of things, but you know, a couple knees in the first, some body punches.
It'll happen. Just you wait.
I feel marginally less bad about that potential matchup. Like my immediate reaction after the fight was that, oh, this is the perfect the perfect way to retire for Aldo, because I do not want to see him like.
He doesn't want to retire at all.
Yeah, he's not going to retire. And my point
no
was
one
that
improves like that to retire.
my point was that I would want him to just have the time to enjoy his legendary status and rest on his laurels a bit, and maybe like save up his health. But yeah, at the pace he's going at right now,
this is MMA, man.
This ain't gonna happen. Ain't happening. He's gonna continue fighting. I guess the only thing I have to do, the only thing I can do, when faced with such a prospect, is to continue supporting our man, our boy. Not really a boy, but kind of like the honorary uncle, I guess, of the fight site.
The founder of the Burger Union. It's coming.
Yeah. Absolutely
big chat name.
Yeah. That's a good one. Yeah. I'm in about the same place. I think Aldo probably. He's definitely past the point of an average fighter retiring, and the fact that he's made it look not easy, but the fact that he's made it look doable to continue past this point isn't really a reason for him not to retire. It's just that a fighter's always going to take any sign that he's doing well as a reason not to retire. With the burger chain closing, I don't really know how his finances are, which is another thing. There's really no way to know where he is. Ideally, he'd have a good nest egg saved up from being the greatest fighter of all time, but we all know it doesn't work like that. So
yes, all that fighting knowledge has to take up a lot of space, so financial decisions aren't going to be his forte, because sorry, there's some construction going on outside my yard.
It's Aldo constructing his late game career. It's hard at work. Back to the workshop.
Yeah, but yeah, as I was saying, it's tough to know whether Aldo's going to retire, when he should, at any point close to where he should, even assuming that he's relatively close to, being what he used to be. It's just not something that he's going to consider. But yeah, I think there are a ton of fun fights for him, even at like the top level, if that makes sense. Someone like Font would be interesting for several reasons. I think staying away from Yan and Sandhagen is probably the move. Sterling might be okay, at least from a damage perspective, but the other two I really don't want. But people are.
Can you imagine how funny it would be if Jose Aldo also DQ'd himself, kneeing LJ in the face while he was grounded?
Very possible. If Sterling goes for a takedown, his knee just hits the floor, Aldo's just in the middle and kneeing him in the head, that'd be something. Yeah, I think there are definitely. I think people are throwing around a Cruz fight, it's a big step back if you treat Aldo as a real contender, but you also shouldn't be doing that. So why not? Yeah, just a tremendous performance. It's hard to say how great this was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I feel like we said it. It was really great.
Yeah.
Now we can talk about the stupid main event with the heavyweights and the.
What's there to say?
Cyril gone past the IQ test. I don't think he did anything.
Is it really
dumb.
an IQ test? I think it's kind of like the kind of test that you like. It's kind of like putting a mirror in front of a chimp to see if it will recognize itself.
That's an IQ
People
test.
People don't
of
like
sorts.
how negative we're being about this fight, but I think it's warranted.
Yeah, I think the best take that I heard on this before the fight was from Phil McKenzie and David Castillo. They read a bunch of previews on Bloody Elbow, and it's always, they're always very good, but they come at it from from a weird place. It's not always the sort of exchange by exchange stuff that we do, but from like a general flow perspective, if that makes sense. And I think the most interesting take I heard from that was that Ciryl Gane is just so insanely fine with a boring fight where he builds on nothing. He's just so comfortable in that environment that there is absolutely no way he'd give Derrick Lewis the opportunity to kill him. It's just, you need to be a certain kind of fighter, even maybe a certain kind of good fighter for Derrick Lewis to have that shot.
That's a good,
if you're willing to just...
a good heavy hand stroke. They say that at like Valentina and like Holly Holm and people like that
they
too.
They say that as a sort of a backhanded compliment. Oh, you're so disciplined.
If you're able to sit at range and just do literally nothing, Derrick Lewis is not going to do a damn thing.
And that's what Ciryl Gane did. As much as people do say that Ciryl Gane just simply didn't give Derrick Lewis anything to work with, he did give him something to work with. It's just that Derrick Lewis is extremely bad, because whenever Derrick Lewis simply walked at Ciryl Gane basically just ran himself to the fence for free. Derrick Lewis wasn't doing anything. He just was walking forward, and Ciryl Gane was conceding ground without countering, without jabbing, without at least trying to jam his foot into Derrick Lewis's baby knees. But he's done none of that. He just walked backwards. And Derrick Lewis, because he's Derrick Lewis, naturally, he wasn't able to capitalize on neither of those situations. And they happened, I think, multiple times. But
yeah, it's something that we noted with the Volkov fight too, is that if you sit up against the fence and just, let Gane, being a volume fighter, back you up in and of itself, Gane's going to follow you and start pecking at you. But if you decide to do anything with the ring craft situation, Gane's going to concede to it. It just doesn't matter to him. And that's generally a pretty poor way to be an elite fighter, unless you're like really, really, really amazingly good at neutral. And a lot of fighters aren't. I don't really know if Ciryl Gane is that guy, but I suspect that he probably isn't. A lot of his game, it works, and it works in that sort of, disciplined, quote unquote, the backhanded sort of disciplined way, where he pretty much only worked with super long weapons and just kicks guys who don't like to be kicked. And it's fine, but I'm not really sure someone as good as him at a different skill set would be considered as technical, if that makes sense.
He's like Whittaker with serial numbers filed off, and for that matter, everything good about Whittaker filed off, like his ability to finish fights and all the damaging weapons that he has, and his defense at mid-range and in the pocket and all that stuff.
Yeah, his comfort in the pocket.
But he is very handsome and charismatic.
Not as much as Whittaker.
Who
like
is?
Everyone talks about how he finished Lewis, he dominated Lewis. No, he didn't really finish Lewis in that sense. He wasn't really building on anything. Like, sure, he stumbled upon some leg kicks, but it was Derrick Lewis deciding when the fight is finished. Essentially, like Derrick Lewis decided when he is finished, and so then he considered the fight. Conceded the fight, essentially, because he was getting sick of getting jabbed up in the eye, and I guess it hurts a lot.
Understandable.
And he didn't like it, and he didn't enjoy it, and he decided, I guess I'm gonna call it quits right now. That's enough of that.
Yeah, Ciryl Gane fights seem incredibly unpleasant for everybody involved.
And especially, I guess, I mean, if Ciryl Gane were a teensy bit self-aware, I guess it would be unpleasant for him as well, but, I mean,
I guess it's the sort of performance that you can't really complain about at heavyweight.
I will complain about it. I can complain about it, and I will.
I'm complaining about it a lot because I'm a massive hypocrite. But it's the sort of performance that you sort of want in theory at heavyweight, but in practice, it's a lot more frustrating.
I do not.
Or you're like, oh, someone's
when
smart.
I talk about the fact that I want a good heavyweight to come around, I'm not talking about some guy that does the Jackson Wink. Annoying Jackson Wink striking from both stances and just like prancing around.
You're talking about Shamil Durahimov.
Yes, and
that's exactly
I'm talking about someone
heavyweights. What's stopping you from being Shamil?
I basically just want a heavyweight who can defend a takedown and can kickbox normally. Please just fight normal. You know.
Could be Ngannou. He's working
Ngannou.
on it.
Very possibly.
That's
Getting
right.
more normal as the days go.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, is that Ciryl Gane is someone who he knows what his win condition is at all times. He's reasonably capable at more than one thing.
It's the
sort of thing where, like, hey, could a heavyweight just have normal flaws. And Cyril Gane has normal flaws. The issue is that he has a ton of them. Enough of them that you're like, well, maybe this guy is just a heavyweight.
How the heavy hands boys put it? Like, most heavyweights are only able to do one thing, and Cyril Gane is able to do two. And that's what makes him different.
He can do 1.5 things. Congratulations, my friend.
This is what we're operating here with the heavyweight division. In the heavyweight division, this is like...
Yeah. That's the thing, is that the fight in front of him is Francis Ngannou, and I think that's a fight that it's probably going to go fairly badly, and that's not even really a knock on Cyril Gane as much as it is. Francis Ngannou is insanely dangerous and clearly improving in ways that are bad for pretty much any heavyweight.
I think he's going to pressure him to the cage and wrestle him.
Yeah, pressure him to the cage. That's one.
I'm half joking. I think he might actually do that.
There are two possibilities.
Dan interviewed Eric Nixick and said he's fallen in love with wrestling and top gaming people. So
that's scary.
There are two possibilities. He can either Rosenstrike Gunn by basically just sprinting at him and taking his head off, because Gunn will run to the fence and turn his back on the strike, and like. This is the JDS scenario, basically, except even worse. And the second possibility is what Ed said, because, I can see how Ngannou could have found the sequence where he was wailing on Stipe Miocic in the second fight really fun.
Yeah, I think there's a good chance that Ngannou finds a fairly reliable, longer gambit, if that makes sense. I don't think he needs to just Rosenstrike him in the first round, but I do think a lot of Ngannou wins obviously end in a round or so. But yeah, I think Gane's not really caring about ringcraft, linear retreats, being fairly vulnerable in exchanges and knowing it, relying on his opponents to just concede space at any given time. It's rough against Ngannou, who at the very least is clever enough to know what he's good at and clever enough to improve at certain things against specific opponents. If anything, I actually kind of think the thing he did against Stipe might work, where he threw out this throwaway straight, and as soon as Stipe started biting on it, he just turned into a shifting left hook. That's the kind of thing, if your thing is retreating linearly and being big, a big guy doing that to you and being able to kill you with a single punch, that's not fun. It's something that's going to annoy you, even if it's not something that, it's not Ngannou running forward at you, but it's something that could take advantage of you not really being that comfortable under fire. Mm-hmm. Lewis, he did as well as we expected him to against Lewis. It's just the fact that that's not particularly impressive. It's just as much down to him being Derrick Lewis as Cyril Gane being Cyril Gane. There's only so much it's like Jacare beating Chris Camozzi 3 times. It doesn't matter. It's fine, you're cool, but
okay,
there's a ceiling to how cool this is.
You didn't make the mistake that all the other guys did, which is just basically throwing your fight away. And Cyril Gane, at least, and
Volkov.
Fucking Volkov. Fun fact, we were watching this fight live, and I went away to take a piss break or something. I don't know, I had to go away from the screen while the fight was happening, and I heard my grandfather from the other room yell at the top of his lungs, "You dumb motherfucker!" And he kept on swearing for the fight ended, and he kept on swearing for 30 more minutes about how Volkov is a blight on humanity and the worst thing to happen to the planet Earth since the World War II or something.
And he's right.
And he's completely correct.
Society has progressed past the need for Alexander Volkov.
Right. Let's stop being mean to heavyweights. We're already going to draw so much undeserved criticism for our correct assessment of the heavyweights.
Yeah, this is going up on Reddit.
Luque, Michael Kieza.
This is going up on Reddit, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Reddit. RMMA, go fuck yourselves. Suck my dick, eat my ass. I hate you all.
Oh no.
That's not very nice.
I didn't say that. That was him.
I'm not going to be making any more regular
me.
appearances. I'm going to pop in every once in a while to say mean things. That's my shtick.
Maybe they'll like that you're mean to them in the last feed, to be honest.
Yeah, sure. Tengridom.
Yeah, if you're on Reddit, you clearly have a thing about
Tengridom never goes up on on Reddit, so they don't know who I am. Probably they only know me from discussion panels. But you fuckers are being mean to Ed. And this is this is a declaration of war.
Okay. But yeah, I mean, the other fights, Vicente Luque versus Michael Chiesa. Did you get a chance to watch this one, Ed?
Yeah, I have thoughts.
Yeah, it was fun.
It started with Kieza looking bad, getting pressured along the cage, and Luque was doing a pretty good job cutting him off, like turning his straights into hooks and lever punching and catching him a little bit along the fence. Kieza landed like one good shot. I walked Luque into a straight, and then he hit a really nice reactive double. And I was like, all right, that's a really nice thing for Michael Chiesa to have in his arsenal, because with tall guys, it's like sometimes level changing like that to hit those doubles can be really uncomfortable. That's why Aljamain Sterling's is so bad. But he looked pretty good on that. The timing was good. The finish was good. So I was like, all right, nice. Then he went to Luque went to get up. Chiesa went to the the Iowa ride. One leg in, sitting on the leg with one boot in, and he was fishing for the choke from there, which was really weird. And then he like fell off the top and went for the triangle, and Luque scrambled and choked him as he tried to reshoot. And it was just weird decision making from Chiesa. I assume his plan was to draw Luque into throwing at him to try to get reactive clincher or double or whatever. But his work on the ground was weird, and he afterward he was like, I choked so badly, like I put a lot of pressure on myself, I was so nervous. He said, I've done this every time. every time I'm in a big fight, I do this. I'm like, well, perhaps don't. But yeah, it just looked like he made some mistakes. But I thought the overall idea was fine, even if his skill set looked to be what it was before.
Yeah, I mean, a couple things. One, Kieza has been darced before by Jorge Masvidal, so actually before the fight,
it's his weakness.
I said, yeah, it's very possible. I mean, he's been subbed in general a couple times. Yeah. Pettis got him.
Kevin Lee got him.
Masvidal got him. Kevin Lee got him. Yeah. So it's very possible he's a sort of like pre-prime Charles Oliveira or like the Gerald Meerschaert type. Like he's super good offensively, and defensively he just doesn't really care because he's so focused on the offense. But yeah, I called before the fight that Luque's darce might make an appearance, if anything, just to like dissuade Chiesa from doing things, like just assuming that any wrestling situation would just get him in a dominant position. And he set up the takedown pretty well.
Ben Cohen for picking Chiesa simply because Chiesa bought his jerky.
But
he was the only one.
Yeah, actually, the striking posed an interesting question to me, because I'm not really sure, because Luque went southpaw early in the fight. And I'm wondering whether we've seen Luque against a competent southpaw before, because a lot of what Chiesa did was just like, 1-2s from the open stance. And a lot of what Luque does is the outside leg kick, the counter left hook, and the cross counter. And a lot of that's complicated by the open stance, right? It turns into inside leg kicks. The cross counter is tougher because the jab is coming from somewhere else, and you're slipping a different way. And if you try to do it with a straight, the distance is different. And the left hook has the lead shoulder in the way. So you're really left wondering, well, is Vicente Luque really all that great against top southpaws? And I don't know how many striking exchanges the Edwards fight. I've been a long while since I saw the Edwards fight, but Edwards did southpaw double attack him a ton. I just think I attributed that to Edwards being an elite southpaw and doing that to everybody who's orthodox, and not just Luque maybe not having a skill set super tuned to that. So I don't know, it's something to wonder about even in the striking here, which is not what I expected to happen with Michael Chiesa, honestly, because Chiesa is all like noodly and kickable and not all that great. But yeah, I mean, strong performance from Luque, about as much as you could ask. Chiesa did his thing, just not quite well enough.
I mean, Chiesa essentially dosed himself. What more can you say? Unfortunate.
Very relatable.
Unlucky Michael Chiesa.
It's more relatable as his career goes on.
Perhaps
more power to him.
I would recommend some listening to relaxing music, like some ASMR maybe. I don't know.
Sports psychologist.
Playing some video games like.
More tattoos.
I don't know how you do that.
a change in your lifestyle perhaps is in order. Something like.
Switch to men.
Yeah. Date a guy, find a nice guy, settle with him.
Mm-hmm.
Someone who wouldn't nag you 24/7. Someone whose ass you.
Someone with a good.
Someone whose ass you can kick, just in case, if he gets too nippy,
That's always a good rule.
Yeah. This is the best thing about living with a guy is that you can just have fights all over the place.
What is this podcast? Yeah. But what was the okay? I don't think we have anything to say about Angela Hill versus Tisha Torres. Torres did her thing.
I decided that Hill got
old.
robbed, so there you go.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty par for the course. So the next fight, Casey Kenny versus Song Yadong. It
annoyed me so much.
enough.
The first 2 rounds annoyed me so fucking much. Like, especially since like Kenny was doing like a bad TJ Dillashaw impression as he does, and like Song Yadong was running around the cage like trying to find overhands, and he was like going like this basically around the octagon, like in a circle. Neither of them settling on a range or like directionality in the fight. And when Kenny pressed Song Yadong to the cage, or rather Song Yadong actually pressed himself to the cage, he'll like freeze, like pump out a bunch of like feints, and that's it. Like, why would you pressure him in the first place then, Casey Kenny? Like, what's the purpose?
Yeah, it's very weird because I've seen Kenny do some decent things with pressure in the past. Both the Alateng Hailey and Nathaniel Wood fights were really impressive in that sense. He seems to like understand what to do when he gets a guy to the fence. Here, he was just kind of stupid.
Yes.
And I think the Cruz fight broke his brain.
I mean, either the Cruz fight broke his brain, or he was afraid of like Song Yadong unloading with overhands a la Woodley.
Going on Sean O'Malley's podcast is definitely what broke his brain.
That's true. That's also fair.
He got publicly shamed after not thinking Megan Anderson was attractive, and now it's over.
I'm not going to give my opinion. If I give my opinion, I'll be in big trouble.
I mean, I guess Megan Anderson would be more attractive if she were, you know, not like a better fighter.
Oh my God, this is now the Sean O'Malley podcast.
Sean O'Malley, I mean, what can I say? He sucks.
Men are trash.
He sucks. Into the bin he goes.
Yeah.
And I hope Sean O'Malley fights Jose Aldo just as a joke.
That might make me sad.
I hope
don't want
Sean
any
O'Malley
chance of that
fights
happening.
Legal charges and goes to jail.
I want Sean O'Malley to fight Pedro Munoz and then legal charges. Pedro Munoz would kill him. But yeah, enough on Sean O'Malley. No one cares about him. Yeah, Casey Kenny, Song Yadong. I mean, it's weird because I've never really had a strong handle on what Song Yadong does. Here, he was just kind of sniping with counters, and when he started kicking, it looked fine. Casey Kenny just kind of gave him the range that he wanted to like put combos together.
I guess it's encouraging that Song Yadong is still young and he was able to actually zero in on the things he needed to be doing from the start of the fight, which is stand his ground and counter Casey Kenny's entries in neutral space and on the back foot, as opposed to just, you know, running around.
Yeah, being smart is not generally a team alpha male
it's impressive
thing,
for a team alpha male guy is
type.
what I'm saying. So I guess there's that. And Casey Kenny started trying to wrestle him, and I mean, if there's anything you're gonna learn a team alpha male is to at least how to defend the double, I guess.
Pretty much, or guillotine them for trying. That's another option. But yeah, I think that's enough on that fight. Last fight on this card that I thought was really fun: Bobby Green versus Rafael Fiziev.
Versus a garbage truck that riding across the street. And the driver is drunk.
They can't jab.
I don't think a garbage truck can hit Sean O'Malley because Sean O'Malley's already in the back. But yeah, Bobby Green versus Rafael Fiziev.
I see what you did there.
A really interesting fight.
It was awesome.
Pretty much, yeah. It was pretty much just exactly what a lot of us expected, I think.
I don't care. The cooler guy won, and Bobby Green was the cooler guy in this fight.
I thought it was a great fight. It was tremendous.
Yeah.
Rafael Fiziev, general bad habits. I think it's a lot of what we thought about Prime Aldo, but without a lot of the good stuff about Prime Aldo. Yeah,
Prime
exactly.
Aldo, but it's terrible. The things that Aldo
it's like Prime Aldo, but it's worse at kicking, worse
at
punching.
If Aldo was terrible at the things he was doing, he would be Rafael Fiziev.
He would be a top 10 fighter.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, it's lightweight, so I guess once you get to the top 10, you're actually the bad one, because everyone unranked is actually the cool guy. But yeah, I think there's a lot to be concerned for Rafael Fiziev. The cardio issue is one, but also the fact that he doesn't seem to really know that he has cardio issues early in the fight.
Let's talk about the cardio issue. So we talked about this earlier today. His cardio is great because he fights at the most ridiculous clip I've seen in a while. It's constant volume, throws everything 100,000%, does not stop, long combination, just whiffing on like monster like arm hooks and just like nonstop. Like he fights like he's on steroids, and he probably is, but like no one would not gas fighting the way that he fights. Like he needs to fight differently if he doesn't want to gas.
Yeah,
it's
it's
not a cardio thing.
Learn to
Yeah, it's
throw
a pacing
straight
issue more than anything
punches.
else. Oh my god.
Throw
Oh
a
my
jab,
God.
bro. One jab.
Yeah.
He can jab once.
It's-
What is that?
I don't think he ever does that. I think his thing is like his probing attack is the kick, but he's also not all that great at like
That and
finding
his
a
way
distance
of
with the kick.
entering
'Cause-
range is to just
Yeah.
whip his head around from side to side
Uh-huh.
and to like fire off like 200% counters at every like dip he does.
Yeah.
It's
It's kind of like the issue we point out with Zabit or with Kyler Phillips a couple weeks ago, I think it was, where like you can tell the way that they fight is just insanely energy intensive. So as good as their cardio is, it's just never going to be enough. But Bobby Green, I think he did a decent job through like the entire fight. It was a broadly competitive fight. Fiziev, even when he was winning, he wasn't, completely crushing Green or anything. And like pretty much no one except Dustin Poirier tends to do that to Bobby Green. So it's not like a huge indictment. One thing I really liked from Fiziev was the way that he started using his kicks to sort of herd Green into the shots. I think it was like in the second round, which is his best round, he like started using the head kick and punching off it to catch Green in the middle of these big leans, or to like limit the lean and blitz him to the fence. So that was some nice stuff. But Bobby Green, I think the way that he fights was always going to be a little bit tricky for Fiziev in ways that we didn't anticipate. Mostly in that he's like decently big and he always throws light. So the way that Fiziev would always need to like go super hard and throw
They're
massive.
opposites.
there's also like a
Exactly.
height, like the
They're
height
exact
difference.
opposites.
Like Bobby Green is long and lanky and knows how to fight long, and Fiziev fights like Fiziev. Like Phil McKenzie said this, and now the
Fiziev.
bonus heavy hands discussion is that like Fiziev fights like a much shorter guy than he actually is, in a strange way. He fights like he's 5'5".
so
Yeah, I
stumpy.
think that's fair. He fights like he needs to cover a ton of distance with his combos, and he might not need to do that much. But you can tell in fights like Moicano that tendency actually helps. But against Bobby Green, who's super durable and he's always going to be there, yeah, they are pretty much exact opposites, right? You have one guy who he's going to be there for 15 minutes no matter what you do and no matter what he does, versus another guy who's probably not going to be there for all 15 minutes, even if you let him
They're like
win as hard as he wants
opposites,
to.
not only in their offense but also in their defense. Like Fiziev's defense is all about basically trying to set up power shots all the time. Constantly, like all the time, throughout the whole fight. Whenever he tries to like defend the strike, he's always looking to retaliate. Meanwhile, Bobby Green is fine with rolling with a bunch of shots, letting you miss, looking untouchable, and then like doing finger guns at you and like laughing at you and not retaliating
Just
and
the
not
coolest guy to
doing
ever
anything.
It's just, I think for Bobby Green fights only, we should score taunts. It's my very unpopular opinion. If Bobby Green's fighting, it doesn't. The hits are what do not matter.
So unpopular that a judge, in fact, came out saying that the reason why he scored the third round for Fiziev was that everyone thought that Bobby Green is just too cool for his liking, and that he wouldn't let that affect his
true.
judging. And that's why he gave the third round to Fiziev based on cage control.
Yeah, Fiziev got hurt pretty badly at the end of round 3, if I remember correctly. He got like he didn't look out on his feet necessarily, but he looked like he was conceding space a bit more.
I think Bobby Green was well on his way to like finish Fiziev if like the fight like went on for like a minute or so. I don't know. Yeah, Fiziev would have been done.
It was pretty ugly. But I don't like. It's tough to say just because fighters tend to pace themselves pretty precisely. Like I don't think Jose Aldo beats Pedro Munoz over 5, even fighting the way that he did with those exact same 3 rounds. It'd just be tough.
I guess he could pace himself for 5 rounds. I don't know, like with his.
He could.
I don't even know what he's capable of anymore.
if Aldo could do it,
ever again.
Yeah.
Like, I don't fucking know what Aldo.
It's just
the man does whatever the fuck he wants.
He's got unicorn
more
blood.
importantly, Fiziev is not Aldo, so I don't think he'd be able to do the same
I never
thing.
thought he was.
Like, there's a weird thing with his defense. Like the other guy, I think you like shared some stats guy talking about how Fiziev's defense is bad. It's not bad.
Idiot.
It's well above average, like in MMA especially.
Yeah.
It's just that he tires himself out so much that by the end of the fight, he usually takes a bunch of shots. He lets the other guy come into the fight because he's like too tired to do the slippy stuff that he does.
he's forcing so many exchanges. He's gonna get hit. It's exactly what people were saying about Gaethje. Even when he first got in the UFC, like, oh, his defense sucks. His defense is very good. He just forces a ton of exchanges.
Constantly
so he's
in the
kitchen
sometimes. That's literally it.
Yeah. No, you have to have good
there's
defense
definitely
to fight
a problem
like that.
like there's definitely a problem with the approach. Like we've seen it with Shane Burgos, for instance, another fighter who has like super good eyes on the inside, but he's just constantly where he shouldn't be. But I think Fiziev, he has bigger problems to solve than just defensive mechanics.
Shane Burgos has Chris Weidman problems where he starts really well and then he's like, wait, where am I again? And he's like loses focus on what he was building on and then just falls out of the fight and he's like, oh wait, no, I'm getting beat up.
It's kind of wild just because all of his losses have like the exact same flow. Like he drops the first round, he starts looking like he's going to finish in the third round and the second round. The third round starts and just get instantly nuked.
I get post-title Weidman vibes for sure.
Like with Fiziev, I think it's hard to say whether he's reached his ceiling.
Both from New York.
Like has Fiziev reached his ceiling? What do you think? I
don't think so. No.
It's lightweight. I think Bobby Green might be one of the trickier guys he faces on his way up to the top 5, but mostly because the 5 through 10 is always going to be screwed up. Like if he came up like a couple years ago, after this he'd fight Ally Quinta and just kill him, and we'd be like, hey, Bobby Green is better than Ally Quinta.
He's at Hoofs right now, isn't he?
Yeah, and he was Tiger Muay Thai's kickboxing coach. Now he's at Hoofs, so he's been working on not getting grappled, which I think is probably a good thing to do.
Do you think
because it's a bunch of grapplers now?
Do you think Hoofs will be able to make Fiziev start jabbing?
Make him jab.
Start jabbing and start throwing linear kicks for once.
Perhaps.
Hoof guys do jab. They do that, but just they also like to left hook. So it's like it's probably contributing to the problem. And it's like, are you going to tell this guy who's like a more experienced and credentialed striker than probably everyone you have in the gym besides like Spong, what to do? And like, does Spong jab? I haven't watched Spong forever.
It's interesting how Bobby Green's offense is also the diametric opposite. It's much more, he operates much more by feel, and Fiziev operates on these predetermined set combinations that he must have drilled
being a tornado
for thousands of hours.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing with Hooft is that sometimes he has guys who jab like Usman, and other times there are guys who like Michael Johnson who just freak out anytime anyone's anywhere near him, and he just goes fucking wild with combinations. Like he doesn't even care if he hits anything; he just bats at air and bats at the guard until he finds something. Like if Michael Johnson is like the mentor, that's not going to go well. But that's true of any fighter. So I don't know. I think it's just stuff with a big camp at that point, I think.
Mm-hmm. Was there anything else in this card that captured your imagination to talk about?
I don't believe so.
Versus Menefield.
No, you liar. Well, if we're not going to pick out anything
Alonzo
particular,
Menefield, the man who fights like an offensive gay stereotype.
Just I watched Manel Kopp versus, I'm saying his name right now.
O'Day Osborne.
And O'Day Osborne. O'Day Osborne, he didn't necessarily impress me, but he did pretty good. He was struggling a little bit with Kopp's style. And he's like, okay, I will draw out your counters and then I will hit you. And he was actually doing a pretty good job at it. And then Manel Kopp flew through the air and killed him. So it was Kopp looked like himself, though. He was doing his thing as well, and Osborne gave him a pretty good fight.
It was very wise of Manel Kopp to return to bantamweight for his flyweight fight.
129, yeah. But that extra poundage gave him the ability to fly.
It's just...
It's like Yoel Romero, missing weight is the best base for scary knockouts.
Always. All right. So that UFC event was pretty good.
Pretty good.
A lot of stuff happened that was worth talking about. Aldo alone makes it worth it. Oh, yeah. So there's no UFC card this weekend, and the one next weekend is bad. So maybe that'll be the one we have to do all our patron requests because we have a lot of them. But now let's talk about the inferior promotions, which have some decent stuff going on. So let's start with Bellator. Actually, no, they're on the same day. Yeah, let's start with Bellator. Bellator is headlined by Gegard Mousasi versus John Salter for the middleweight championship. Undisputed.
Thoughts?
Mousasi will win. Right?
Have any of us watched Salter? I don't.
Yeah,
I've never watched
it was a
Salter.
while ago, and it was in Bellator.
Get Ryan in here. He will tell us all about Musashi.
Fanyo would tell us a lot about John Salter, though.
Oh yeah,
that's what
I know one person who would tell us a lot about every Bellator fighter, but we don't want him on.
No, we do not. So that's the main event. Just some notables. The main fight that really matters, the third fight from the top. Magomedov is fighting out Raufeon Stots. This was booked for a card a little bit ago, and now it's going to happen. And it's a cool test for Magomedov. He beat the crap out of CJ Hamilton, who is decent. I remember CJ Hamilton fighting Casey Kenny on Contender Series, and gave him a go. He was supposed to be the guy, and then Kenny beat him. And they're like, I guess Kenny's the guy. Yeah, but then Magomedov just beat the crap out of him. And he ragdolled Matthews Matos before that. And obviously he has the fights with Peter Yan, and he beat Oleg Borisov, and he's good. Stots has the one loss to Marab via 15-second spinning back fist. But otherwise, he's been perfect. He's competent. He's an MMA fighter, for real. And he can wrestle, and he can do it all.
Really
he's a
real
sport guy, but he's a professional MMA fighter, as we say now. Shout out Brad Tavares for starting that. But yeah, he's a Rufus Sport wrestler. So it's okay, the main things we don't like about Rufus Sport, he has already eliminated half of them by being a wrestler at his base.
That makes sense.
Yeah, but I think that's a cool fight, and I think Magomedov will probably win because he's also a pretty good striker. And he's probably a better wrestler than Stots. So
I mean,
yeah, I'm gonna pick him there.
Magomedov is just one of those Russian MMA fighters. So I just they're pretty good in most of the areas of MMA. Mm-hmm. They mixed the martial arts.
He did the closest thing to what Aldo did to Jan. He did that in the rematch, fought like Aldo did, and was doing a lot of open side kicking and stuff like that. He's really good. Andrei Koreshkov is fighting. It's really not worth it to care about him anymore as someone who's good, but he's fighting a Sabah Hamasi who throws hard punches a lot, and they're probably gonna bang, which is people like that. And
I remember Hamasi from his UFC run.
Yeah,
the Al Hassan fights were stupid.
Mm-hmm. One more person to watch on this card is Danny Sabatello. I wrote about him before his Titan FC title fight, which is his 6th fight in his career. 7th fight in his career. But yeah, he wrestled at Purdue Division I. I don't think he ever had All-American status, but he beat a bunch of All-Americans. He had a very decorated career. He's a very good mat wrestler. And he lost the Erwin Rivera fight after, getting takedowns pretty much every round, but this wasn't quite the grappler that he needed to be for MMA yet, which is surprising because mat wrestling was supposed to be his strength. And Rivera wore him down with body work and knocked him out to the body in the 4th round, which is pretty cool. But being in a 5-round fight that early in your pro career against someone experienced from a camp that deals with wrestlers because he's a hoofs guy is understandable. And then Rivera looked terrible in UFC, and then he has psychotic break and stabbed his sisters. So not a good result there, but he's on a 5-fight win streak, and he beat Brett Johns in his last fight. And Brett Johns is pretty decent and was good in the UFC.
Fine.
Yeah, and he's a grappler, so that bodes well. And now Sabatello is fighting Johnny Campbell, who got a big upset over Henry Corrales in his last fight. But this guy, most of his career was in CES and New England, and he's kind of a journeyman a bit. And now he's fighting a big prospect. So maybe he'll do some veteran shit and win, or maybe Sabatello will just continue to build up. But Bellator's bantamweight division is good. They got some guys, and it's headed by Sergio Pettis, who is the goodest of them all.
Shout outs!
That's actually pretty cool.
Shout outs Bellator for nuking Fenya's video on Sergio Pettis for no fucking reason at all.
Dickheads.
No one is giving
Sorry for
any
promoting
attention.
A fighter. Won't do it again.
No one is getting thanks for bringing some eyes on our very good fighter that we that the UFC fucked up by letting him go, and we took him under our wing. Thanks. Now go fuck yourself. We're gonna nuke your video and then copyright claim you and copyright strike your channel. Thanks, Scott Coker.
Gonna make a video of Rob Font beating the crap out of Sergio just for this. Fuck you, Bellator. Not just for that. Font is cool.
Scott Coker,
other event.
more like
That's
Skunt Cocker, like with a C.
It works.
this podcast is going to weird places.
It works.
All right. Is that everything on the Bellator card?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the other one's PFL, right? The playoffs.
PFL playoffs, baby.
Get ready to cringe.
Yeah, Roy McDonald's in them despite losing to Gleison Tebow, which is hilarious. He
It
got
seems
robbed,
like a
right?
flaw in the matchmaking.
Or he
Yeah, he
got
got robbed, but
Okay.
also it's funny that Gleison Tebow got close enough to rob him, if that makes sense.
I think Tebow is like not in the playoffs. He's just on the card.
Yeah, he's fighting Millender, right?
Yeah. So Tebow's going to beat Millender because Millender seems to lose to anyone who can grapple. Yeah, Roy McDonald in the main event is fighting Ray Cooper the third, who's the son of MMA veteran
Ray Cooper the second, I
the
assume.
second, whose dad I don't think was an MMA fighter. So
Maybe
that
he
breaks
was a
the chain.
wrestler.
But
Was his name Ray Cooper?
Ray Cooper the fourth, I hope, is going to be a fighter as well. Yeah, Cooper's was like the golden boy for a while because in his first PFL fight, he knocked out Jake Shields. And then he beat another guy in 18 seconds, and they gave him Jake Shields again. And he knocked him out again. So I was like, all right, you're a legend. And then he lost to Magomed Karimov because that guy can do everything and is competent at everything, and just grappled him. Then he choked out his cousin. Then he got knocked out by John Howard, which is just terrible. That's a terrible result. And he went to a draw with Sadabusi, which is even worse, honestly.
Oh, that's terrible.
But then he knocked out Chris Curtis, who I rate, and he's beat some other guys. And in his last fight, he beat Nikolai Alexakin. So he seems to be in decent form now. I don't know what happened there in the middle. Those 2019 was a bad year. But he's fighting Roy McDonald. I mean, he just has some basic skills in the feet, but he's very athletic. He's a wrestler, and he punches really hard. So if Roy McDonald is not durable or down to deal with people throwing really hard punches at his face, he might get knocked out. It could happen.
Yeah, it's kind of at the point where I can't trust Rory McDonald to do anything anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It's tough to say, but
although if there is a place you want to go to get used to wrestlers throwing hard punches at your face, Sanford MMA is probably the best one. So
that's true.
Rory's been there for a little bit now, and Rory's been more focused on being an offensive grappler later in his career now, and that's probably the best move.
I thought he embraced Jesus lately, didn't he?
Sanford MMA is like a Christian healthcare company essentially.
Mm-hmm.
It's very strange. But yeah, they that is embracing Jesus, actually going to Sanford.
Yeah,
they're the most Christian camp.
Yeah, whenever we say that we need more Jesus in our lives, by that we mean everyone should go to Sanford MMA.
Go train with a giant Dutch guy.
Yeah. He may not teach you how to walk on water, but he will give you a competent kickboxing game. And in MMA, that counts as a miracle. Counts as something.
It's a blessing. Bless Gilbert Burns with the left hook. Yeah. So Magomed Karimov is fighting Sadabusi. I don't think he's gonna have any trouble there.
C is just huge.
Yeah, there's some good lightweight matchups like Clay Collard versus House Menfio should be watchable. They both did Menfio fight Pettis yet?
Yeah, I think they both beat Pettis.
Yeah, they both beat Anthony Pettis. Does that even mean anything anymore?
I don't think
doesn't seem to mean anything anymore.
You're better than Cowboy? There's something.
Rajabov is fighting a guy that should have fought Anthony Pettis and probably would have beat him. But the guy got robbed by Schulte, which is tradition in PFL. And Rajabov has got a 27 knockout over Ahmed Aliyev in his last fight, and he actually lost a split decision to this guy in April.
Do you think
so
when
they're gonna run it back?
Do you think when Sergio Pettis got knocked out by Rob Font, his father came up to him and said, "You're the most disappointing thing since my son"?
He didn't get knocked out. He kind of got wrestled at the end, which is kind of more embarrassing.
True.
Yeah, knocked out of the winning contention. Saved you there.
Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Sure.
Just go to Sergio after getting jabbed up. You really have the defense of your brother. I can see it in your eyes.
This is a very negative podcast. You brought really negative energy to
joke.
us.
Such a good joke.
I'm very positive about Rob Font.
I fucking forgot how Pettis managed to lose to Font. I mean,
getting it correct.
Everyone managed to lose to Font.
Everyone loses.
Yeah,
to
the only
Font,
other person on
just
this
in
card,
many different ways.
Yeah. Yeah,
trying to
you're
cover the event,
Peter Yan's gonna
guys.
get DQ'd against Font. Okay,
Killing me.
Yeah, there you go.
You're killing
It's
me.
PFL.
2 more people to say their names. I'm going to say 2 more names.
Okay.
Name one, Olivier Aubin Mercier. We like him. He's been looking good. He did a lot of cool open stance stuff in his last fight. Other name is Magomed Umalatov. I haven't watched him yet, but he's 10-0. He's probably from Dagestan, and he got a really quick knockout in his last fight. So there you go. He's probably going to do really well. And he's in the welterweight division.
He's built different because he's a mountain man from
he's a hard step man.
A hard
mountain step. He's a mountain
step man. Like that
Who's
guy said.
harder, the mountain men or the step men?
He's a how can you like make a funny mashup of the word step and mountain? Like
I don't know if it's possible.
Pepman?
Not in English. Choose another language. It's not going to work.
Yeah, in English it's not going to work.
That's MMA events. Anything news related that we need to talk about in any way, shape, or form?
Don't believe so. Jacare retired. If anyone's super into him,
rest in peace.
Something.
Crocodile man, alligator man. What is he?
Alligator. Yeah, he's a gator.
I think it's alligator.
I think also.
See you later, alligator.
Gators are in freshwater, right?
He also wrestled.
Oh, damn, you got that one.
Also wrestled like one, except if the alligator's arms and legs were replaced with like Tonka truck wheels.
Yeah, he was only good at wrestling once he already had a hold of you, but he didn't have good entries, much like these creatures.
Yeah. I don't know how gators actually hunt.
Yeah.
But
well, it's like they kind of have to waddle towards you.
They can run fast in straight lines, but if you zigzag, it screws them up. Much like Jacare. It's very interesting.
You just pivot behind them. That's the way to beat an alligator.
600-pound silverback Jacare or a grizzly bear. Like
this feels like the Woodley versus Chimp discussion. There's just no way to know.
I mean, Woodley loses obviously, but like the Chimp has the initiative. It's because it's aggressive.
That's true. You can't concede the ring craft with the Chimp. But yeah, I don't know if there's any other news here.
Didn't Sandra actually get called racist for that Reddit post where he asked would Woodley or the Chimp?
I think it was a big meme on Reddit for a really long time. I don't even know if Sandro made it up.
I think there was a big thread about that, and I don't even know if it was on our MMA. It might have been on another.
Who would win? Yeah, very possibly. But yeah, Is there any other news? Does anyone know?
If there is, I don't know it.
Yeah, it's pretty much just Jacare at this point. Couple fight bookings, nothing super interesting.
I mean,
Armin Sarukian is booked against Christos Iagos, which is funny.
How long until Volkanovski versus Ortega?
September. I think.
A month.
Fuck's sake. Yeah. Oh, Jesus. What's the next UFC? It's
Cannoneer versus Gastelum.
For fuck's sake.
I don't hate that.
I guess it's a fine fight.
Yeah, but the rest of the card is really terrible, except for Pantoja versus Royval. Yeah, there's like 2 fights on that card.
Like Pantoja and Royval are the opening fight, carrying that fucking card and all on their shoulders.
You only have to watch the first and last fight of the card. That's pretty convenient.
Yeah. You just watch the first fight and fall asleep and wake right back up. Or don't wake up.
Yeah.
No one's going to judge you.
It's really the first fight that matters. Yeah.
Technically, you never have to wake up.
Okay, well, on that note.
MMA makes me want to never wake up, except when Jose Aldo is beating Pedro Munoz.
Yeah, that's the theme of this one. Aldo Munoz is the only good thing that's happened in the sport.
Committing to living for at least another few years.
I mean,
of that fight,
earlier than that, like what was the other good thing that happened in MMA? Conor McGregor breaking his leg, I guess.
It's been a good year. Yeah, we've had a lot of nice things happen. Me being right about lots of stuff.
Remember when Dustin Poirier knocked Conor McGregor the fuck out? That was cool.
That was nice.
And Borny made him break
Holloway
his leg.
Cater for a lot of people who weren't me. That's another one.
Robert Whittaker clowned on Kelvin Gastelum, also a good thing that happened.
That's true.
So good bit of positivity to end the podcast.
That was great.
There you go.
Yeah, those things.
Chad Mendes doing bare knuckle boxing.
Oh no! You had to ruin it.
And people, what's funny is that people are like, "Oh no, he's a wrestler. What's he gonna do in bare knuckle boxing?" It's like
Gonna punch people hard in the face.
It's like
The problem is that he's not a
it's
fighter
like
anymore.
everyone like forgot that Chad Mendes was one of the best strikers at 145. And
But Tumen, he lost to all the elite strikers at 145.
Sorry, he's a wrestler with an overhand.
So therefore,
See
he's
you
not
later.
a good striker because he lost those fights.
Yeah, Chad Mendes sucks. Okay.
More like Bad Mendes. That's how you do one of those jokes.
Damn.
Chad Mendes,
The
more
end.
like
It's counted down.
Yeah, that's gonna be the end of this one. 3, 2, 1, 1, 1.